To doubt is to bring up all the old tapes, all the old programming, all the old story of what you've been told you are, what you've also thought that you were, right? And what you've reinforced in your own mind that you are, you know? And everyone else might reinforce that, you know? You might be perfectly healthy, right? And someone might be keep telling you you're not healthy, you're sick, and someone's looking at you and they're seeing the health, and someone else is looking at you and they're seeing the sickness, right? So if they look at you and they're always seeing sickness, you're probably not going to get well, right? When there's nothing wrong with you in the first place, you'll probably become sick, you know? And if another person's looking at you and you are sick and he's looking at you as if you're well, there's a good chance that you can become well.
It's almost like what you were saying about what you resist. Instead of fighting against it, just turn your energy away from it and put your energy into, like, instead of fighting ill health, just put your energy into health.
Yeah, right. Instead of fighting against mind, fighting against ego, bring in presence. That's always
put your energy and attention to presence.
Yeah, and that's always been the truth, right? You can't fight a non-existent entity, right? And the ego, right, actually is a non-existent entity, right? It doesn't really exist. It exists, it comes into existence through association of two thoughts, right? That's how identification takes place, right? So you can't fight a non-existent entity. You can only bring in something that exists. Like you don't fight darkness. Someone said, you don't chase away darkness with a broom, you turn on a light. You know, be completely caught up in your own emptiness, you know, completely blissful, right? But not realize there's an outside world. You know, you kind of get trapped in the inner world and not realize that there's this whole outside world.
Your own bliss?
You're unrelated.
It's so enticing.
Yeah, it's so enticing. You're unrelated, disassociated from everything around you, right? But if you...
Is that a phase you go through, or is that...
I think so. Yeah, it seems to me, you know, to be a phase that everyone kind of goes through. You get kind of, I don't know, drunk on emptiness or whatever. Or you get kind of attached to, they used to say it, you know, getting attached to the consolations of God, right? The feeling, the good feeling of bliss, right? And then, okay, maybe you don't have that extraordinary bliss, but you know, my experience is that there's a bliss all the time. You know, when you look for self-nature, the experience of self-nature, knowing itself is blissful, right? When self-nature knows itself and is knowing itself, it's kind of like knowing itself is loving itself. You know, it's constantly in love with itself, knowing itself, discovering itself, right? And that can be kind of an internal journey, because you're like, oh my gosh, I thought it was out in the world, and then someone told me to turn away from the world and go inward, right? And now I'm having this beautiful, beautiful experience. I don't want to leave this, right? That's the real encounter. That's the true encounter. To meet and find yourself in that other person, to meet and find yourself in that flower, to meet and find yourself in, you know, a rock. But it's not about, you know, finding a projected idea of who I think I am, because that's not in the rock. The rock has its own projection. It has the projection of being a rock. The flower has another projection. It has the projection of being a flower. And the person has another projection of being an individual, you know, apart and separate from you. But those are all kinds of projections, right? Is there a possibility of just the bare essence meeting itself?
Now, what do you mean by the bare essence?
The intangible nature, right? The source.
And somehow there's a satisfaction there also. It's satisfying, like being in your own bliss, like being in your...
It's the same thing.
Drunk on nothingness.
Right. Absolutely. The bliss when you know yourself, right, that self-aware awareness, if you will, right, that is, perfectly happy knowing itself. It's perfectly content to know itself, An idea can come in and say, oh, there's got to be more, or I need to have another experience, or, this is boring, right? But that self-nature, knowing itself, the self-aware awareness, the self-aware awareness is never bored. It's always with itself, always free, always present, always enjoying, always, just kind of
content.
Yeah, it's always content. And it's not based on anything. It's not based on what's happening. It's not based on circumstances. Right? So when you meet a flower and you go, oh, how beautiful, right? The flower is definitely beautiful. But the bliss that comes from the experience of the flower comes because of a resonance between what's looking and what's looked at, and the recognition of that being the same thing. That you're looking at self-nature. Self-nature is looking at self-nature.
So that seems to me, I would say that would be thrilling.
It's thrilling. That's God seeing God. Right. And that's what a true encounter is. That's what I call an essential encounter. That's what it is. Yeah, it's really allowing seeing from silence, right? Because even when there's noise, something is listening to the noise. Now, is that something listening to the noise, is it quiet? Or is it also noise?
Probably it's silent.
Right. So looking from there.
So it can hear the noise.
Yeah, right. Right.
Because noise on top of noise is just more noise. It's probably not very distinct.
Right. So look from that which is always silent. Yeah.